Now, we know psychology is being used in a lot of different places, by a lot of different organizations, by a lot of different people, in a lot of different ways. And some of them are very helpful, and some of them perhaps have some risk associated with them. So I think the question here becomes, what should psychology preserve? Because there's definitely things that should remain with psychology and the psychologists. What should psychology redesign? Because there are things that we do need to look at doing differently now that we have AI, which can help us do some things differently and perhaps more efficiently. And then lastly, how should psychologists guide AI use responsibly as it becomes part of the work? Because I think it's time for us to acknowledge AI is part of the work. Whether you're using it or not, your clients likely are. And in that way, AI becomes part of the work that you have to consider, that you have to do. We know people use AI for research. We know people use AI for summarization, for lit reviews, for documentation. There's so many ways in which people use AI. And I think we need to acknowledge at this point that it's becoming part of the way we do things. Hello, and welcome to Season 3 of Beyond the Couch, AI in Psychology. I'm your host, Dr. Ernest Wayde. So as always, before we get started, I always want to take a moment to thank the organizations that make this podcast possible. This episode is sponsored by the American Board of Professional Psychology, the National Register of Health Service Psychologists, and my consulting firm, Wayde AI. Their support helps us create thoughtful, psychology-focused conversations about how AI is shaping our field. So, Season 3. I've been thinking a lot about where to start this season because the conversation feels different now than it did when this podcast began. Even a year ago, a lot of the conversations still felt preparational in nature. Psychologists were asking, is this coming? Should I be paying attention? Is this something that might affect my work someday? And I think we're past that point. And I think at this point, we're past those questions. AI is no longer something psychology is preparing for. It is already inside the work. I mean, we already know from research that clients are talking to chatbots before they come into session. Students are using AI while faculty are still figuring out what counts as acceptable use of AI in the classroom and in education in general. Clinicians are using it to draft notes, think through cases, or prepare for supervision with their students. Researchers and publishers are trying to figure out what AI means for authorship, data analysis, literature reviews, research integrity, publication, and unique contribution. Leaders are being asked to prepare for the use of AI tools they themselves may not have had time to fully understand. And even for psychologists who are not using AI themselves, the people they serve probably are. So I think this is where we should start this season. Now, we already know the answer to the question, is AI coming? Is a resounding yes. In fact, it's already here. So that moves us to the next new question. Now that AI is already here, what is psychology responsible for? What do we do as psychologists now that we're in this new era and reality of AI? And that question builds directly from season 2. Now, in season 2, you may remember we slowed the conversation down. We tried to get underneath the excitement and the anxiety and ask 3 basic questions. What does the technology actually do? How is that different from what psychologists do? And what ethical and professional responsibilities cannot be delegated? Those 3 questions still matter. In fact, I'd say that they matter more now because the more familiar these tools become, the easier it is to stop asking careful questions about them. When a tool is new, we notice it. We wonder about it. We may even be skeptical about it. But once it becomes part of the normal workflow, part of that ordinary way people write, research, summarize, study, document, or ask for advice, it becomes almost invisible. It slowly integrates itself into our lives and our workflow to the point where we don't even notice it or the influence that it's having on us. And that is when the risk changes. Not because AI became suddenly bad. I mean, AI is neither bad nor good. It's simply a set of algorithms. But because we may stop noticing when judgment is being shifted, where responsibility is becoming blurred, or when a tool is beginning to shape the work instead of simply supporting it. When we defer more to the AI tools and applications than rely on our own abilities, judgment, and expertise. So season 3 can't just be about whether AI is good or bad for psychology. The question is too broad. Now, we know psychology is being used in a lot of different places, by a lot of different organizations, by a lot of different people, in a lot of different ways. And some of them are very helpful, and some of them perhaps have some risk associated with them. So I think the question here becomes, what should psychology preserve? Because there's definitely things that should remain with psychology and the psychologists. What should psychology redesign? Because there are things that we do need to look at doing differently now that we have AI, which can help us do some things differently and perhaps more efficiently. And then lastly, how should psychologists guide AI use responsibly as it becomes part of the work? Because I think it's time for us to acknowledge AI is part of the work. Whether you're using it or not, your clients likely are. And in that way, AI becomes part of the work that you have to consider, that you have to do. We know people use AI for research. We know people use AI for summarization, for lit reviews, for documentation. There's so many ways in which people use AI. And I think we need to acknowledge at this point that it's becoming part of the way we do things. So this is the frame for this season: preserve, redesign, guide. Now, this is really important because I think a lot of psychologists are living in this tension where they're trying to figure out themselves what to do about some of these questions. And I think this would be a great opportunity for us to have this conversation and try to figure out the answers together. So on the one hand, there are parts of psychological work that need to be protected. I firmly believe that. Things like professional judgment, ethical accountability, the responsibility we have to the people, the students, the organizations, the systems, or communities that we serve and work with. The ability to understand context, the ability to hold complexity, the ability to know when something sounds right but is not quite right. Those things cannot simply be automated away. That's part of what we do as psychologists. That's part of the expertise that we have. But on the other hand, not everything about the way we currently work is the most effective or efficient way of doing things in the world of AI. Let's be honest, some of it is just familiar. We like to do things that are familiar, and change can be challenging for anybody. Some of it exists because of old constraints, documentation burden, training bottlenecks, research workflows, academic assignments, supervision structures, access limitations. There's a lot of reasons that we can point to as to why we do things the way we do them. And not all of them are bad. In fact, I would wager that there are good reasons for the way that we've done. In fact, I would wager that there's good reason for the way that we've done things, and it's helped us to be effective at what we do. However, things have changed. AI can do a lot of things and allows us to increase our capabilities and our efficiencies. So this is an opportunity for us to look at the work that we do and the way in which we do it in a new light, and see how we can take advantage of AI to help us do our work even better. The way organizations use psychological knowledge, the way students demonstrate learning, the way clients or communities find support. Some of these things may be ready for rethinking, and AI may force that rethinking faster than we expect. So the challenge is not simply to protect the old way of doing things, and it's not to rush toward every new tool because it's simply efficient. The challenge is to know the difference, what must remain central, what can be redesigned, and how do we guide the use of AI in a way that is responsible, ethical, and actually useful to us as psychologists, to the clients that we serve, to the organizations that we work with, in our research settings, in our academic settings, and so on. This is the conversation that I want to have this season. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you would join us to make it a rich conversation. Now, if you've enjoyed this show in the past or this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. Feedback is a gift, and we love gifts. We hope you'll join us again soon.